Hey there. I just thought I'd hop on for a minute because there's this story going around about what is going on in Illinois, and it is rather upsetting to those of us who work in this industry, but that's okay. So I thought I would just share it. Um, Illinois wants to collect the first in the US crypto transaction tax that applies to any transfers or trades with crypto. They want to collect 0.2% of every single trade, every single transfer, every single movement of digital assets, not just when you're selling it and you have a gain, but when you're just moving it. So if you had one Bitcoin and you decided to move it from Coinbase to a cold storage wallet, they would collect 0.2% somehow, probably by having Coinbase do their dirty work for them. And why this is ridiculous is because do you get taxed every time you move your money from one bank account to another? I mean, let me tell you, I had this experience this week where my kids were trying to figure out how to pay their first month's rent on new apartments, and both of them ran into the apartment owners or the apartment people would only take payment in a Zelle account. Now, I don't know about you, but most people don't have a Zelle account and they don't know how to access it or use it. So my kids both this week tried to set up a Zelle account, and it was so ridiculous. I had one of them message me Sunday night, and he said he had just left town on a cross-country trip with his friend, and he said, I finally got word on how to pay my first month's rent, and they want a check mailed to this address, and of course I'm not home. Can you mail them a check? And I was like, yes, I can do that. The other kid called me sobbing the next day. She has been working on it for a month trying to figure out how to pay them, and she tried to send a check, but the bank blocked the check, and then the people were traveling, so they needed the check before a certain date, and that didn't happen because the bank blocked it, and all this crazy stuff. And finally they're like, the only way you can pay is Zelle. So she opened an account just so she could set up a Zelle account. She set up the Zelle account. She tried to move funds in. The funds aren't clearing. I mean, it's like the worst description of how traditional finance works. It was so bad. And she called me sobbing because she could not get the funds to the apartment people. And her roommates are all getting mad because they're like, you haven't paid your share and we need to close on this apartment so we can move in next month and all this stuff. And she's so frustrated. And she's like, Mom, can you help me? Can you help me? And I was like, well, I could pay whoever you want in crypto in a matter of minutes. I can go online. I can find assets. I can transfer the assets. They will be there within minutes. No question. But transferring funds in a Zelle account, which I did set up once because there was a company that was paying commissions and they only were going to use Zelle. And then that fell through. After I finally got it set up, they were like, this is too much, whatever. They now send me a scheduled check every month that I earn commissions. But I did set up this account. It had $289 in it and she needed $2,250. So I was like, okay, in this account, which is set up with an internet bank. So I do have a savings account that did have those funds, enough funds to cover it. And I was like, I think I could transfer the funds to the checking account and then send the funds with Zelle. So she's like, yes, please help me. So I immediately sent the $250 for the first like a test payment, and it said pending. And then I transferred the funds from the savings to the checking. And then I think at that point I couldn't do anything else because the funds have to move to the new account. So the next morning I woke up, I checked on it. The funds said pending, that they were moving, and the $250 Zelle payment that I sent also said pending, but the checking account said I could send the $2,000 more that we needed. So I sent the $2,000 and it went immediately. It was just like crypto. It was like, okay, it's gone, it's done. They can probably see it on the other side. I'm like, that's great. But we still have the first 250 is still pending. And I checked later that day 2 or 3 times. Finally that night, my account was negative because 2,000 had already gone, but the money from the savings still hadn't transferred into the checking. And it was just like, oh my gosh. But eventually, the next morning, everything says it's gone. I still haven't heard if she confirmed with the apartment owner that they got the rent. But in any case, it was so hard to use the traditional system. But with all that said, the reason that these apartment owners are using Zelle, I think, is because you can send large amounts of money and they don't have to pay fees. Can you imagine what gives Illinois the right to collect fees on transactions. If they were doing that on apartment payments or whatever, I mean, the cost of living just explodes. And the reason the government in Illinois came up with this bill, of course, I'm sure they have budget shortfalls. I'm sure they need money to run the government and all that sort of thing. And they look at the digital activity, Bitcoin and crypto activity in Illinois, and they look at it and their little greedy eyes go off and they say, oh, we can make money this way. But honestly, if I lived in Illinois and I knew that this was coming, this is supposedly going into effect on January 1st in the coming year, I would be seriously considering moving at this point. I don't care where I lived in Illinois. I would be like, okay, I am moving across the border to whichever state is next to me, because there is no way I would want to be taxed every single time I want to move my crypto. For sure, if you had like large amounts, but even the small amounts, even the like, sometimes you're using a crypto credit card. Does that get taxed? Sometimes you're doing dollar cost averaging. Like I buy $15 of Bitcoin every day. Would that be taxed? Am I having to pay part of the 0.2% of that $15 that I'm using to purchase the crypto every day? I mean, it's just an insane law. And as of this week, this tax law is now being challenged in court. The digital assets industry is like, this is not fair. You can't just pick on people with digital assets because there's all the other finances, and why don't they have to pay these transfer fees? There's discussion in this particular article that they might also be going after stocks because it's such broad language. It says here, its broad language makes possible an interpretation that it includes electronic transfers of traditional financial assets like stocks, options, contracts, and index funds. So that would be crazy. But in any case, point being, keep an eye on your governments, on your states, on your countries, and pay attention to what they're doing. We have to stand up and say, no, this isn't cool when they start threatening our rights to privacy and to self-autonomy and self-custody of our own assets. It's bad enough they collect taxes on our gains and they think oh my goodness, there's someone came to me once and they were trying to help somebody who was trying to sell a lot of Bitcoin. It was sometime last year and it was like $4 billion worth of Bitcoin. And they lived in the country of Canada, and Canada was going to take half. And I'm like, what right does Canada have to $2 billion of crypto gains just because you live in Canada and you lucked out, you bought it early? I mean, you don't luck out when it's that way. You lucked out in terms of timing, but you had to sit through all of that and hold on to it long enough for it to grow that much. But what right does Canada have to half of your $4 billion in Bitcoin? That doesn't make any sense. So in any case, that's today's message. Pay attention to what your government is doing and don't let them create crazy rules. Protest. Figure out how to get involved in the process. And if that doesn't work, think about moving somewhere that's a little bit friendlier for crypto. And good luck out there.